Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Take It to the Bank. My name is Stefanie Hammond. I am part of the Head Nerds team here at Enable, and I am the head nerd that is responsible for all things MSP growth related, all things sales and marketing. The goal of these coaching videos is to provide, semi-bite-sized piece content of sales and marketing advice, guidance that you can immediately incorporate into your MSP that will hopefully pay off with either new leads or new signed contracts at the end of the day. We are continuing, though we are nearing the end, our multi-part training series focusing on helping MSPs develop their marketing operating system. I'm being joined once again with Mark and Dave from Wingman. So thank you, gentlemen. And so just really excited to be able to continue with this video series. I think we have 3 episodes left, I think, when we look at the plan. And it's just really focused on, helping MSPs grow their business, convert their leads into signed new businesses at the end. So in this episode, and let me bring up our little jigsaw puzzle that we've been talking about the last few episodes. So in this final episode of the series, we have now finished our deep dive of the 8 different jigsaw puzzle pieces that MSPs need to focus on to help them, gain real traction when it comes to their marketing efforts. But we're not done talking about what is actually needed to continue to build an effective MSP marketing operating system. So in today's episode, we're going to be speaking on the left-hand side, the tools of the trade, measuring milestones and what success looks like at different parts of the marketing operating system journey. So to start, I hope for everybody that's watching today, you'll see that CRM is listed there. I'm hoping everybody has a CRM for their MSP, but say an MSP doesn't have a good quality CRM, gentlemen. Are you able to give a rundown of what they should be looking for, what features would be considered the most valuable from an MSP sales and marketing perspective?
Probably a subject close to my heart, I think. So most of my career, I lived in PSAs, of course, in my MSP days. And for most of you listening, that's probably where you're going to be doing your opportunity management. I guess it makes sense from a workflow perspective that you'll be closing new opportunities and converting them into onboarding projects, etc. But most of you, of course, unless you're doing proactive sales and marketing right now, will wait for referrals, create an opportunity when there's a referral and pass them through the system. But what about everything that comes before that? Where are you keeping the prospects, where you're building an audience? It might be untidy to keep it in your PSA. I know many of them have a marketing element to them. Some people love it. More people find that there's features that are missing. It's not quite fully rounded because, of course, that's not the sort of core purpose of the PSA. So you might want to consider having an appropriate best fit CRM stroke marketing automation system to run in parallel. Something that you can create custom fields so you can tailor things to the unique data points that an MSP would need to capture and maintain against prospects, but also somewhere that records all of those sales activities, the touch points that you can operate email marketing, put your LinkedIn activities in there, and ideally have some kind of sync potentially through some kind of API to your PSA to streamline that process. Now, that's easier said than done. A lot of the PSAs are not super easy to integrate with. Some of them talk to these third-party platforms like Zapier, etc. But that can be difficult. So you may want to keep your prospecting living in a system separate to that, somewhere where you've got the discipline to log into it. The problem is if you're owner manager, it's yet another tool on top of a long list of tools that you're probably already living in. So that time management, having the discipline to go and record another system, and try and bake it into your process from a timekeeping perspective. So you get sort of prompts or pre-scheduled sort of events in your Outlook calendar that will remind you to go and follow up on those opportunities, to go and commit a certain amount of time to reaching out on LinkedIn and doing all of those sort of sales administrative things to keep everything moving. The sales activities that Mark spoke about a couple of episodes ago. But importantly, you need a CRM to record all of that in. And it almost doesn't matter what it is. Even at the bare bones, of having a spreadsheet that's just a single place where all of that information lives. It doesn't have to be fancy. That's something perhaps that you can build up to. Mark, any further thoughts, maybe?
Yeah, it's funny you talk about spreadsheet actually, because I did some clinics with a gentleman over in the Netherlands a few months back, and we were talking about where is he at with the different opportunities that he had, and he started to talk about one or two or three or four, and I said, so what, where are these all held? And he sort of pointed to his head, and I was like, okay, right, well, we need to start doing something. And my worry was, and my worry for anybody watching this who perhaps doesn't have the right place to organize what's going on from a sales and marketing perspective, it's very easy to be distracted by hundreds of different CRM systems on the shelf out there. And so my personal advice would be, if you literally have nothing at the minute, or it is buried and too difficult within perhaps some kind of older PSA, pull up a spreadsheet, put some very, very simple headings at the top, and just get disciplined in using it. I think that's the first thing to do, because it's very, very easy. We see people spending hundreds, thousands of dollars and pounds on the likes of HubSpot, and I'm never knocking HubSpot. It's an incredible tool. But even Excel, most of us only use about 1% of its functionality. So be careful not to go and buy something and you don't need most of it at the particular stage in the journey that you're at. So it needs to be customizable, as Dave said, so it can fit to you as a unique business. But yeah, be aware, there are so many out there. There's so many SaaS tools.
And don't lose loads of the budget,
Yeah.
loads of the marketing budget, paying for a shiny tool.
Exactly.
There's a lot of platforms good at pulling people in, but it's not going to do the marketing for you. It might automate some things behind the scenes, but it won't write copy. It won't create landing pages. It won't pick up the phone and prod prospects. So yeah, don't be drawn in by the shiny. In fact, we mentioned spreadsheets. Something just comes to mind. We all live in the likes of Microsoft Teams now, and you can get those little sort of table widgets. The name escapes me.
The Loop,
Loop,
plugins.
yeah, Loop. That's it.
Yeah.
All these bells and whistles we've got within there now. So even something super simple like that, to have a handful of opportunities in to just help your accountability, even managing your own accountability, to just follow up with those prospects, because we've seen so many MSPs over the years invest a lot of money in marketing to generate leads, but be distracted and lose traction because there's a lack of process and time dedication to see through all the necessary touch points with a prospect to get somebody from first conversation to that ultimate signing on the dotted line.
And more on that in the next episode, by the way, where we'll talk about accountability. But yeah, I think that discipline thing, start with a spreadsheet and get used to that discipline of actually working it, and then from there build and find the right system for you.
No, I think that makes sense. So I'm just bringing back up our opening slide, because we've been talking about the marketing, MSP marketing operating system. So wanting to kind of talk about, what does success look like, for an MSP as they travel through the MSP marketing operating system, and meaning that, like, what analytics, because we have analytics there being highlighted there, what analytics should MSPs be monitoring regularly? How do they define and measure, what their milestones should be as we're progressing through each of the stages there?
Maybe I'll begin this one. I'll let Dave follow on after. But I think that the key two words that you've highlighted there, Stephanie, is a progress platform here. And I think the old adage of what you don't measure, you can't fix. And I think it's so important that this sits alongside. We have these two boxes. We will talk about the human factor in the next session, as I mentioned. But this isn't, once you start to get into these jigsaw pieces, this isn't something you do sequentially. This is something you do just constantly, and you move around those pieces depending on what's going on at the time, depending on how much resource and budget and energy you have to actually make this happen. So this sits alongside, because you need to be able to show progress. And this is the perfect point to hand over to Dave, who has a wonderful analogy, and I love it.
Yeah, they sort of blends into kind of managing the human factor, I guess, which, as Mark says, we'll come on to. But you need the data to visualize those things so you can feel you're moving forward. So maybe one of my last analogies for this series is, we all know what it's like driving in traffic, and you know that painful feeling when you're sat there not moving and you've got no idea how soon the cars will start rolling ahead. All you can see are those red lights ahead of you. But if you were moving forward, even at 10 or 20 miles per hour, you can start to feel a little bit of air going past that window. All of a sudden things feel an awful lot better. You're not at full speed. It's not rescued itself yet, but you're progressing, you're moving forward. And that's the same with sales and marketing. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight unless you are incredibly lucky, but you're likely to then go back to 0 again very quickly if you've had a fluke of a bit of success. This is something that will build over time. And for that very reason that, the weeks and months that we've already spoken about that it takes for this cycle for attracting new business and converting them, particularly cold, I just want to stress that point that it is very different to those the referral business that you're very used to. You're having to nurture people, so they will not close as quickly. So to maintain the energy and effort and budget, the blood, sweat and tears that goes into this, you need to see green shoots. You need to see, you sprinkle some seeds on the ground. You want to see a little bit of green poking up from the dirt to know that you're moving in the right direction. And that's only going to come from applying numbers to each of the things that you're doing. So of course, this is relative, to the marketing activities you're doing and your spend. So we can't give you the specifics, but you want to look at, if you're working on being found, to know that you're going to be found, you need to monitor your SEO ranks. So therefore you need a tool or a partner that's going to monitor those keywords for you. And then, as you look at these things trickling down, your rank will increase, ergo your discoverability online increases. Therefore you expect to see more traffic. Therefore you create more chances of getting those important contact form submissions or intent data that you can follow up on. And there'll be a number for each of those things relative to your investment, relative to your market, relative to the search volume of traffic. And they're the things that you can start to build up. But I would also advise, don't get too hung up on the granularity of those numbers, especially if you're looking at them on a day-by-day or week-by-week basis. You want to look at these things at least monthly, if not quarterly. There are always seasonal trends. As we're recording this, we're in the middle of the summer break, and kids are off, and you can tell the traffic on the roads is a lot quieter than it is normally. So therefore, not as many people are going to be in offices looking for potential MSPs right now. So try and look at things in quarterly cycles. Try and set modest, achievable milestones so you can feel that wind in your hair of moving forward. If you say, I want to be number 1 on Google for IT services in my city, in a week's time, it's never going to happen unless you're already maybe a number 2. So, if you can't be found at all online right now, set something that is modestly achievable, and you should have, maybe experts in an agency or a partner or an employee that's working on that for you that can help advise you on what are those realistic numbers that we should be aiming for. Set some monthly or quarterly goals and then put them on a dashboard. And it's hard because there's not one perfect tool that shows all these things. It's why we ended up building our own to be able to visualize what's going on with our clients. But shop around, look at the tools that are out there. Even if you start with Google Analytics at the base level, that will at least show you where your traffic's coming from, show you trends over a period of time, and just help you bring some sanity to your marketing, particularly in the early days, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months into the marketing. You may not be flooded with inquiries yet because you're still building momentum. So what does that momentum look like?
I just want to go where you're saying if you're not getting, the result, you're not getting the success, it doesn't mean you stop. It just means that, take a look at what you're doing. I think it comes back to, look at those metrics, look at what you're doing, examine the data and just make some tweaks. But don't stop, because I think a lot of MSPs, if they're not getting that, immediate success, they throw the baby out with the bathwater and just claim that marketing doesn't work.
And some of them may be little bite-sized steps. It might
Yeah.
be, we've increased our rank, we've got some traffic to the site, or we've started doing some engaging work, we've started running campaigns, we're pushing out emails, we're getting folks back on our website. Now what? And if you haven't implemented that next step in the journey, you're not following up with them, then that's what's missing. That's why you're not turning intent into conversations, because you're missing that next step in the process. No one's going to be able to implement all of this stuff overnight from day one, switch it on straight away. So build up that maturity as we've done in this video series. So you're starting with the sort of simpler foundations of things to put in place, build it up, and always be pushing things forward to the next step. There's always something else you can be doing to move the needle.
Absolutely. I was going to cut you off. You had something to say there, Mark?
Oh, they said it all,
Always.
of course. No, I will throw in one. Just there's nothing. There's no point in me trying to expand on what you said, because it's all bang on. The one thing I will throw in was an anecdote that we literally picked up last week. If you do want to show progress, you need to be able to answer your phone. Actually, we were so what's the word? Surprised, incensed by this, whereby my colleague Josh needed to follow up with 5 different MSPs across North America a couple of nights ago, and not one of them answered the main switchboard number or the sales line. Not one. It was bizarre, because I actually posted about this on LinkedIn. Another colleague here in the UK posted something identical about an hour before, and I eventually noticed it a couple of days later, where he'd done something similar here in the UK. So if you do want to bring these things to fruition and show that progress and start to move things forward, if you're doing lots and lots of good work within those jigsaw pieces and spending lots of time, money, and energy on it, the natural conclusion to that work is for the phone to ring. And if you don't have the right person manning that phone and being able to handle that phone. I mean, we didn't even get onto how well they handled the call, because the phone call didn't even get answered. But also being able to handle that call, then what's the point? So do make sure that some of those basics are in place. And I don't know if we've already touched on this. Along the same lines, when was the last time you tested your Contact Us form? Make sure it's not being caught up in a spam filter, or make sure it's implemented through some kind of CRM widget of some kind, and is coming directly into the CRM. But again, Dave and I have heard this 1,000 times. Oh, we didn't receive the contact form. It's okay. We've got a backup. Here it is, So some basics to get into place.
I think that's a very, very good point.
One final point. Sorry, Stephanie.
Nope.
I just got to say this before I forget. Everybody doesn't think about, where are we right now? It's good to jump in and look at the future and see where we want to go and think about goals and push ourselves forward. But when you are 6, 9, 12 months in, and you give yourself a hard time because, we've not closed 20 deals, we've not got to where we really hoped we were going to be after X number of months. Just think about where you started from. So capture baselines as of today. If you're about to start marketing tomorrow, capture your baselines across, how many people do you have in your pipeline? What's been your closure rate on opportunities? And, back to remembering that difference between referral business and cold business. How many people do we have in our audience? Who are we reaching out to? What do we know about them? What's our current rank? What's our average traffic? How often do we get leads through the website? Think about all of those things, because you'll give yourself a hard time. But then if you just reflect and think, well, actually, we didn't really have a lot going on 6 months ago. So actually, the fact that we've had a few conversations, we've got a couple of opportunities in the pipeline. Yeah, haven't won anything yet, but we're only 6 months in. That gives you a bit of a reality check. But you need those numbers, and you need them in a system against some goals. Otherwise, what do you look back against? How do you bring some sanity to it?
Absolutely. And celebrate those wins, right? Because marketing, growing a business, it's a lot of work. And like you said, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. So, but thank you, gentlemen, for again helping MSPs, talking about the different strategies that they need to work on to develop their MSP practice. I know with this episode, talking with MSPs, they're not as disciplined in kind of setting those goals, setting those benchmarks that you just talked about, Dave, figuring out, are they actually making progress? So I think this episode was a very valuable exercise just to remind you, figure out where you are so you can measure where you're going, and then look back to see, okay, what do I need to do if we're not meeting, kind of those goals that we've set for ourselves. So good reminder for that. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about, we've mentioned, Mark has mentioned this, Dave has mentioned this, the human factor and the role that leadership and MSP culture plays in successfully building and executing your marketing operating system. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Hope you can join us in the next episode of Building Your MSP's Marketing Operating System on Tech It to the Bank.